Let's talk about a piece of civil rights history that deserves way more attention than it gets. Before Brown v. Board of Education changed the country, there was Mendez v. Westminster, a case in California that challenged school segregation head-on and forced the state to admit that separate but equal was a lie. It's a story about Mexican-American families who refused to accept second-class status for their children, and it laid crucial groundwork for everything that came after. In 1940s Orange County, there wasn't an official law on the books that said that Mexican-American kids had to go to different schools. But it didn't matter, because school districts, they did it anyway. They set up so-called Mexican schools that were overcrowded, run down, underfunded. They justified it by claiming that these kids needed special English instructions, even though many of them were fully fluent. The truth was simpler and uglier. It wasn't about helping kids. It was about keeping them apart, making sure that Mexican-American children didn't get the same education, the same opportunities, or the same hope. Gonzalo and Felicitas Mendez weren't having that. They were farmers, immigrants, who wanted better for their children. In 1944, they tried to enroll their kids, Sylvia, Gonzalo Jr., and Geronimo, in the local Westminster school. They were turned away and told to send them to the Mexican school instead. But they didn't accept that. They knew it was wrong. So they did something about it. They joined 4 other families, the Ramirez, Guzman, Estrada, and Palomino families. And in 1945, they filed a federal lawsuit against 4 school districts, Westminster, Garden Grove, Santa Ana, and El Modena. Their case was strong and unflinching. They brought in children to testify in perfect English, proving that these language barriers were just a racist excuse. They showed that the Mexican schools weren't about education. They were about separation and subordination. They forced the court to see that segregation wasn't just some accident or a policy quirk. It was deliberate. And in 1946, they won. Judge Paul McCormick ruled that the school districts were violating the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. It was the first federal court ruling in U.S. history to say that segregating kids in public schools was unconstitutional, even without a specific state law mandating it. But the fight didn't end there, of course. The school districts tried to appeal the decision, and in 1947, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the ruling, affirming that the segregation of Mexican-American children was unconstitutional. This wasn't about one family, one school, or even one county. The ruling forced California to confront its own hypocrisy. Governor Earl Warren signed legislation ending all school segregation in the state, not just for Mexican-American children, but for Asian American, Native American, and Black students too. The case didn't happen in isolation either. Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP filed an amicus brief in support of the Mendez families. The Japanese American Citizens League also sent their support, only a few years removed from the internment camps. This was about solidarity, about communities standing together because they knew that the fight against segregation wasn't just one group's burden. It was everyone's. And when Brown v. Board went before the Supreme Court in 1954, the legal arguments were built on Mendez v. Westminster. They cited its precedent. Earl Warren, who'd seen the impact of segregation firsthand in California, was Chief Justice for that landmark ruling. This isn't about downplaying Brown v. Board or pitting communities against each other. It's about telling the full truth. Mendez v. Westminster mattered. It was a turning point. It showed that ordinary parents, immigrants, farm workers could stand up to an entire system and win. It forced the state to admit that separate was never equal, and it laid the legal groundwork that helped make Brown possible. So when we talk about civil rights history, don't forget the Mendez family. Don't forget Felicitas and Gonzalo. Don't forget Sylvia and every child who deserved better. Don't forget the other families who risked everything because they refused to have their child be treated as less than. Because this is an ancient history. The fight for equal education didn't end with one court ruling, and it sure as hell isn't over now.